loved everything about him. His hands, and the way he smelled. He swept me off my feet.
So what happened?
To a lot of people, you say insider trading. It may as well be murder.
Let's get out of here before they change their mind.
I'm going to put you on some medication. We'll get you through this.
She looks amazing.
She's doing well.
He's made me sick to my stomach.
We'll find something else.
I can get us back to where we were, Em. I promise. I can make that happen.
Okay, baby.
So you're feeling better?
Yeah, much better.
Well, I'm afraid that this review has a chronic condition of no Corey. And unfortunately, there's this terrible side effect from the medication from it, which means Brian Salisbury gets to be on.
Haha, I'm a side effect. Deal
Get
with
it?
that drowsiness.
Wait a minute.
Get it?
No, but what happens, like, you're here and he's here.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like there's going to be this echo going on the whole time.
There will be a tsunami before the end of the day.
There will be a tsunami before the end of the day.
Okay, just so everybody knows, Ghost and Corey are gone. So it's going to be me in between you guys and your battling puns.
Waka, waka, waka.
Yeah.
It's a pun sandwich.
Anyway, side effects.
You know what? This is, and it's almost a shame this is our first of a bunch of these reviews we'll be doing together during this brief period that these other two guys are gone, because you can't get much more serious than this film. There's not a lot of comedy in Soderbergh's latest and Steven Soderbergh's latest, and in fact, one of his apparently last films, if he keeps true to his word about retiring from film.
Oh,
And
Steve, come on, knock it off with that shit. You know you still want to do it.
Even if he's serious, I'm like, don't do that.
Exactly.
Come on.
You know, pick somebody lame to go out. Let them retire.
But if this was, in fact, going to be his last theatrical release film, I believe he still just has the Liberace film coming up for HBO. It would be a hell of a way to go out, quite frankly.
I would have to agree with that.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is I thought personally, I mean, I know there's some disagreement on that Warm Bodies was the January surprise, but February is starting out with one hell of a surprise as well with this movie, which not only is one of the better Soderbergh films in some time, if altogether, but is a film you can't watch without attributing in a positive way the word Hitchcockian, which I'm always a little leery about doing.
Because it has the word cock in it?
No. Because the word Brian De Palmian seems to be orbiting that phrase.
That's the problem, is that so many films that get labeled with that Hitchcockian.
Yeah.
I'm usually like, no, you mean like shitty film that tries to be like a
Right.
Hitchcock film. The difference being here is that Side Effects actually builds its characters and its plot so deftly. It constructs such a intricate little tapestry that by the time the twist actually comes, and this is just like in the second act, the way Hitchcock always used to do it, and changes the entire fabric of the film, and then the next twist comes, you're like so thrown that, like me, I think a lot of people were like, I'm not sure I even wanted there to be a twist. I really liked these people when they were who I thought they were.
But be that as it may, I think even like me telling you right now that this movie is a thriller, there will be a point when you're sitting there watching it when you think, I was full of shit. Like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
It's about these people, and this is all gonna end up being a trial film.
Yeah, it's very conventional at the beginning. In fact, there are points where it even drags.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, be forewarned, the beginning of this movie may cause drowsiness.
Yeah, and it's one of those films that at first I'm going, is this going to be one of his more like girlfriend effect type films, that it's really more of a character study, that it's like the director is kind of pulled back and just letting these people in their lives and who they are play out in a very sort of ambient way? Because at first it kind of seems like that's
Ambient
maybe... See? Now wait a minute here.
Hey man, I know what I'm in for. I'm just trying to get in the game. But I got to get a few points on the board.
But it's almost like he's playing with the audience's expectations of Steven Soderbergh as a director.
Oh, yeah.
Going so far as to even cast Catherine Zeta-Jones, one of his regular people, and more recently, of course, Channing Tatum. Who
See Tate.
He's like...
See Tate.
See Tate.
Well, no, that was Magic Mike.
Oh, you're right. That was. Story here follows Jude Law as Jonathan Banks, who is a very powerful and successful psychiatrist, the kind that by default we kind of in movies and TV shows, they come with a mark against them automatically. We're like, oh, he's powerful and successful, and he's
Pharmaceutical
company.
But he's British and he's sweet.
Well, yeah, but
He's like House if he wasn't an asshole.
Jude Law's been playing a lot of kind of smarmy characters lately,
True.
too. So we're building to some level to go, okay, here's a guy maybe we're not necessarily going to like, but he seems nice enough when he starts having sessions with Emily Taylor, played by Rooney Mara, who, of course, we saw recently in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo,
Yes.
the American version. Her deal is that she is in this what seems like a great relationship with her husband, played by Channing Tatum, who's recently come out of a few years in prison for insider trading scandals.
Yeah.
They're trying to build their way back up, but there seems like there's a lot of love. I mean, we're really getting an intimate look inside of their family.
Yeah.
Like, of seeing what's going on there, and it's like, wow, it seems like there's a lot of love, but she's suffering from pretty severe depression.
Yeah,
The point that-
severe. Like the random crying, like, man, you wanted to get it together. It's like almost like you want to yell at her, but you realize it's not her fault, and you just feel bad for
she
her.
has an anxiety disorder, and
Yeah.
it seems very clear. And those things are not as clear cut as just saying, "Hey, snap out of it."
Yeah, get
Or,
over it.
Can't you just decide to be happy?
Yeah.
It's just not the real world, the way the real world works for people who suffer from this sort of thing. So you can't help but have sympathy for this very realistically portrayed portrait of someone suffering from this type of depression. And it's so bad that she actually tries to commit suicide by ramming her car into the wall of a garage, which leads to her being basically forced into sessions with a psychiatrist.
I saw her 4 years ago, for a little over 9 months. She didn't just have the rug pulled from under her. She had the rug, the home, the husband, her entire life gone. Even her health insurance. She moved into the city to find work, and I never heard from her again. I'm glad you're seeing a man this time. I think that will help.
Why is that?
Never felt seen by a father. Then her husband ends up in jail and she's abandoned again. And I'd be happy to see her have a different kind of experience.
A series of pharmaceutical drugs is given to her with lessening quality of effects until it all leads up to a horrible crime.
Well, she gets a drug that's working like so great.
Yeah. And then
Except there's sleepwalking involved.
and a horrible crime is committed.
Yes.
Which I don't want to. I think the less said, the better at this point. Even though it's twisted is certainly pretty much handed to you in the first couple seconds of the film. From there on, you're dealing with a very different film.
I think she should have known something was up when that drug wasn't administered orally. It was done through a neuralizer from the Men in Black. Because it causes this issue where it's like suddenly she's sleepwalking and doesn't remember anything that happens. And that's dangerous. I mean, I know I'm not a doctor, but I'm pretty sure that's dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, there's like when you look at the list of the side effects, though, on approved medications that are out there, sleepwalking is among them, amongst much worse ones.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, like it's easy for you and I to say who don't have to take anything this heavy. Like, oh, who would actually allow a drug like that on the market? But oh wow, they allow stuff much worse than that.
And it's funny how
and
often
pot is illegal. No, sorry, I'll stop.
It's funny how often with these drugs, they talk about all the great things they do, and they go to list the side effects. And the list just keeps growing. Like, it's like whoever was listing them all off might be this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this.
Yeah.
And this and this, and the side effects end up being worse than the actual anxiety or whatever the disorder was to begin with. It's
and
like
the film is so self-conscious of the fact that the audience is aware of that.
Oh, yes.
The audience is confused by this world that we're in right now, that the audience doesn't know who to trust or what to trust. That the audience is aware, very aware, that all these things that the whole pharmaceutical industry has turned into like a fast food industry in some ways. I mean, big, bright advertisements, lots of backstabbing between companies.
A veritable rainbow of uppers and downers.
And the film plays on that to some degree.
I love the fact that it plays on that.
Yeah.
Once again, it's so frustrating to talk about a movie like this because there's only so much we can say to you about the details and how we really feel about
True.
what ends up playing out here without spoiling something for you that, believe me, you would be very upset if we spoiled.
Well,
for you.
but I mean, it does something I can say without spoiling anything and playing off something you said, Cyrus, is that it does take the idea of awareness and make it a running theme, and not just for the characters in the movie, but for the audience. Because there are things that going into this, we have to take at face value, just like, when you read the ingredients on a medicine bottle, it's like, I can't pronounce this stuff, so I'll just take it at face value that it's helping me. And that whole idea of, like, what we're actually aware of ends up playing into the movie in so many different and fascinating ways. I really thought that was great.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. The more I think of this, about the film, and really, like, how it was so aware of how its audience was going to react to these things and how carefully it built these characters and got you really to feel like you knew each one of them really, really well, only to pull the rug out from under you. The more I keep thinking of new stuff I wasn't even thinking of when I came out of the theater. I'm like, God damn it. I am very impressed with this film, but I will say this. I think it's a victim of its own success to some degree, because I think that they set up such an incredibly interesting story about the drug industry and about whose fault it is when something goes wrong and about depression and how people deal with it. I mean, it's such a convincing and such an incredibly well-told story that when it turns into, I'm not going to say a conventional thriller, but a slightly more conventional thriller, a genre film, we shall say, I was kind of disappointed.
Oh, I wasn't.
I was like, I was really interested in this story, and now everything you were talking about just became a subtext, or really just kind of it was like an illusionist going, look at what I'm doing at this hand over here, so you don't see what I'm doing in this hand over here. But hey, the other hand was actually more interesting to me.
I don't know. That's where you and I break, because while everything you're saying about the film that was presenting itself as was interesting, it was a bit heavy-handed, and there was that point where I was like, I love these performances. I love the writing on this. I like how methodically it's going. But I don't know that I'm going to like where this ends up. Like, I'm at a point right now where I don't want to be hit over the head with this.
Right, because it's an indictment, seemingly at the beginning, an indictment of the pharmaceutical industry. And I think we're very well aware at this point in this country how the benefits and who the people that it's actually supposed to be helping become superseded by the bottom line. And that's what it's all about. It's a business. So the idea that it was going to go that way and just become this, once again, this heavy-handed sort of indictment of that. And then when everything kind of shifts and the other shoe drops, that's when the movie came alive for me.
That's why I disagree with you. I don't think it was a one-sided indictment of the pharmaceutical companies. That's why it was so interesting, because it was showing fault on multiple levels, and this doctor who was well-intentioned but trapped in between all the stuff that was going on. Like, he never, in the context of that part of the movie, he had no idea of what was happening or why it had happened or where he went wrong, but he's trying to figure out, did I actually do wrong?
Sure.
Is this my fault?
He's in a compromised position.
And there's all these details
on multiple fronts.
There's all these details around it that so build up to that being that much more interesting. Even his own, oh my God, I'm not consciously aware of me having done something wrong, but maybe I did do something wrong, mirrors the actual situation that causes this problem in the first place. And it's a the big dramatic first twist. And I found that absolutely fascinating. Like I said, it's not till it got a twist after that goes from, it's not impossible, but it's slightly more implausible. Certainly no more than a good Alfred Hitchcock film, but it just didn't feel like that was the type of movie we were watching. And like I said, it's not really a fault of the film. I think it was a victim of its own success. It did its first part too well, and then I just wanted to see that movie finish.
Well, that happens, but I don't know. I didn't feel the same way you did. I welcomed that shift and became newly interested in where it was going to go, and it never disappointed. I never felt like, oh, I know what's coming next. It was constantly doing things I was like, wow. So what happens now?
Oh, it was very surprising. There's no question. All the way through, it was such a well-constructed twist that he covered up completely ahead of time in every way.
Oh, yeah.
Seeing it coming. I mean, I don't care who you are. You did not predict the twist in this movie.
And in fact, that's one of the best parts of seeing it is the moment. I mean, you may figure it out right before it happens, but in that moment, you're like, oh, shit. Is this really? And all of a sudden, you're like a deer in headlights. You're like, oh no, oh no, oh no.
Well, that's
in fact, I would say it did its first part so well that when twists started happening, I kept wondering yeah, but is it really happening, or am I just seeing it this way?
Right, because they make, that's one of the themes of the movie, that whole, how guilty are you if you don't even know what really happened around you? Are you responsible for things that you weren't aware of?
Yeah.
I don't think that there's any sort of vagueness about that at all, ultimately, in the plot of this film. It's not one of those movies that goes, it's up to you what really happened.
Right.
No, it spells out every detail by the end. And I gotta say, one of my absolute favorite things of this is the way that they so poetically give justice to the main guilty person here at the end. I mean, it's almost Shakespearean, the justice that they get here.
It's true.
Well, you wonder sometimes with something like this how often it's going to end with going well, somebody's got to get off, and that's just the way it is. That's the cynical worldview.
That's where I thought it was heading, and that's why I was like, no, do something else, please.
Yeah, and for me, it reminded me of how I felt when I saw Miller's Crossing, which is my favorite kind of plot, where a guy gets so in over his head to where even I'm going like, dude, you just fucked. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
And somehow figures a way out of it.
Yeah, and for me, it's not the same kind of surprise, but it reminded me of the surprise that I felt watching The Informant that he did.
Oh,
where it's
yeah.
like you have this movie that is clearly just about this one thing.
Yeah.
And then you realize that it's multifaceted, and suddenly that discovery makes it a much better film.
Which may be his last really film as great as this. I love
be.
The Informant. It's about to come out on Blu-ray. Super excited to watch it again.
I love The
Wait,
Informant.
this is the one with Matt Damon, right?
Yeah, and Russell Crowe.
Wait, no, that's The Insider.
Oh, The Insider.
No, The Informant's the one with
I'm
Matt.
thinking you're right. The
Yeah,
Informant.
okay.
That was
Yeah.
just okay.
God damn it.
Okay, see, because I was like, weird you saying, because like when The Informant came out, I remember I loved it.
And I was just like, it's
yeah,
all right.
so hearing you say it, I was like, wait, there's somebody else?
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that movie because, here, just like with this film, it's clearly one thing,
Yes.
and then it's not.
Your one other backup is Brian Salisbury. Congratulations!
I'm fine with that.
Boom.
I know, I'm kidding. Brian Salisbury, one of the world's greatest critics. I said it.
I'm sorry. Did you say that with a straight face?
No, of course not.
That's very sweet of
But
you.
it proves how good an actor I am.
There you go.
I gotta say that while there was a number of nefarious or, unscrupulous characters in this,
Yeah.
the one I felt that I hated the most was Jude Law's wife.
And you wanted her to like.
Wow, did she just sell him out? I mean, not sell him out, but just not believe in him at all.
Well, the biggest problem with her really was that she was one of those characters who was so underdeveloped that she was really just a plot device ultimately to show how ultimately fucking shit end of the stick he gets things. And I understand why they used her the way that they did in the film. And we don't know anything about her really. And that's
I know
just
she's a
as well.
bitch.
Yeah, I know that. That's pretty obvious.
See, we can't even argue this without representing the really specific details of the
Fuck her,
third
man.
act. But
Yeah.
I don't.
You know why? You know why? Because I look at like you take the Sopranos.
Yeah.
And sure, Tony Soprano, he's a mobster. He's a philanderer. He's a son of a bitch.
Yeah.
And Carmela, she's kind of a harpy. But when shit goes down, she stands by him like nobody's business.
Yeah.
And
that's
that
when
just
the
turns
AK
me
comes out of
on.
the closet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and in this movie, you're right. It has nothing to do with the actual plot. It's just, it's hard for me to buy that relationship if the minute anything happens, the minute there's a short, and I'm not talking about the big thing. I'm
Yeah.
talking about the one right before that. When it's clear that he is invested in something, he believes that he's been wronged, and she refuses to stand by him. And that really bothers me because I can't buy that as being a real relationship. And the fact that you bring that relationship back around toward the end, it's like, no, I don't buy that because I don't buy that they would be together.
I could buy it as a real relationship. It just bothered me.
I didn't-
Because it was just so like, well, I just got a job, and you had 2 days. You just been sitting around doing nothing.
It didn't seem unrealistic to me. However, I thought that little bit you're referring to, Brian, towards the end would have been better left out because I
Yes.
felt like without it, you see a picture of a man who realizes that he was living kind of a shallow life
Right.
anyway. Like even to the extent of the relationship that he was in. And with that, it's like, well, you didn't really learn anything, did you?
Well, he didn't learn that particular thing, but that
He did learn some stuff.
He got schooled quite a bit.
That's a behaviorist doctrine there of like the electric shocks until you figure out what the fuck not to do.
Yes, yes. This, if nothing else, never volunteer to go to a mental institution.
Okay.
Not even on a visit.
No,
like if you know somebody there, just send them postcards.
Yeah.
Seriously. I know a lot of people are asking us are going to ask, how is Channing Tatum? Because we come down so hard on him. And actually, he's not in this a
He's
lot,
not.
even though the trailers sell it as if he is, but he's just fine for what he is in. He handles it just fine.
Nobody's stinking up the
They
place.
don't ask him to do much, quite
Right.
frankly. And
yeah, he does well with what he's given.
Now, Catherine Zeta-Jones is one of those actresses that gets a lot of mention, is always in, what's she doing now type of thing. And I've never found her that interesting of an actress that personally. And I think here, acting-wise, she's the only thing that pulls us back a little because everybody else is in top form. She seems to think she's in a campier movie than this really is. Because right from the get-go, you kind of get the feeling that something's off about her.
Yeah.
Because she plays it all so, like, kind of arrogant and bitchy, and you're like, even to the point where, like, we're inside of the plot twist, it is a little campy.
I kind of felt like she was the same character she was in Broken City, and I'm going like, so I guess unless she's in a musical, this is just what she does all the time.
Yeah, and it's what was really weird for me is how she went back and forth from being like sexy, smoky antagonist and Charles Nelson Riley. Like, I don't know who designed her look, but there were shots where it was like, is that Charles Nelson Riley? Is this Match Game that I'm watching?
There's a ton of makeup on her.
Yeah. It's like cake
it's noticed.
makeup.
Yes.
Well, it makes you go, like, she's one of those actors you're like,
It makes you wonder if the asylum was Arkham that she was visiting.
I thought this was a kabuki film. I'm sorry.
she needs to go out on a weekend with Diane Keaton. And Diane Keaton, like, look, everybody knows you're old.
Right.
Just fucking
just go with it.
gracefully into age.
Yeah.
Because it's HD. We can see through the pancake.
That's true. And I think, honestly, the best performance in the movie by far is Rooney Mara. Like, there's so many layers to that performance, and every time that she occupies one, it's done as if she's done miles and miles of homework on each specific aspect of that character, and I was really, really impressed with her. I also thought Jude Law was powerfully sympathetic.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Law had been having a kind of hard time of it lately until just recently. And I think this is, a sign of a really positive comeback for him as an actor.
Yeah.
Like, I agree with you about Rooney Mara, but I thought Jude Law was the anchor that held this whole thing
absolutely.
together. That he was the one that had to show the most amount of, like, restrained range. Like, he had to still be that character. He couldn't go too far off it, despite being put in this, like, insane amount of persecution.
Right.
Where I know if it was me, I would have been like, grab a shotgun, like, fuck all you motherfuckers, who gets it first? I'll kill you all.
He is the anchor, but I do think it's her performance that really makes this thing come together.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to go right ahead and give my review. This really is not only one of the better Soderbergh films that you can see throughout his entire career, this is certainly the best film so far this year. There's no question that for me. I would be shocked if this doesn't make it to the Oscars at the end of the year for at least performances, if nothing else. And I hope, considering this is, getting to the end of Soderbergh's career, presumably, that he gets a Best Director nod. He certainly deserves it. It's a beautifully shot film. It's incredibly well crafted and constructed, meticulously even. One of the better films he's made. I give this a full price.
Yes, I agree with everything you said, with the exception that it's so early in the year. If this gets nominated for anything come Oscars later on, I'd be shocked. It's just that everybody forgets the February movies.
It happened with
Crash.
Crash. It happened with Crash, and it also happened with the Michael Shannon's performance in Take Shelter.
Yeah.
Like, what happened with that? I just feel like that was another situation. It was too early in the year, and it was well deserved.
Well, except
deserving, but
you meant the other side. Crash actually was early in the year,
and
it won everything.
It won Best Picture.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. No, that's the point I thought you were making.
Yeah, it does happen occasionally.
It does. It's just so rare.
This might be, if for no other reason, that this is the end of Soderbergh's film career.
That could be enough to draw attention to it, and yeah, it's so great for all the reasons that you mentioned. And I would once again warn, as Brian said, it's kind of slow in the beginning. Don't give up on it.
No.
Pay attention to everything. But yeah, it's a full price.
Absolutely. And going back to, the whole the Hitchcockian label that gets thrown around, I don't know if you'll end up seeing this in your multiplex, but there was a big push at the press screening to not miss the first few minutes, which is very much a Hitchcock trope where they were warning you, like, this film has a creative narrative timeline. You don't want to miss the beginning. And frankly, I think the first 3 minutes, all that does is hint at something that's going to come back later. And I thought it took a little bit of the power out of that shock.
I agree.
To see it coming, to see the breadcrumbs that would lead back to it. And I started thinking, maybe you should miss, like, the first 2 minutes of the movie, because if you don't know it's coming, it's such a better shock. But beyond that, I thought it was a really intelligent, really relevant thriller, masterfully shot, masterfully constructed. The performances are all great, with the occasional exception of a cartoony Catherine Zeta-Nelson Riley. And I also kind of like the fact that there's...
Do the impression, for God's sake.
But yeah, the other thing is, like, I think it's interesting that there's a balance between this movie and Contagion, where Contagion was sort of like the justification for hypochondria, and this movie, at least in parts, plays out like, okay, but don't be too dependent on pharmaceuticals either. Like, just be a normal human somewhere in the middle.
God damn it, Steven Soderbergh, what the fuck are we supposed to do?
You can get fucked either way. But yeah, I think everything about this movie works. I think it's a great ride, and I definitely would agree that if this is Soderbergh's final theatrically released movie, he went out on a high note. So enthusiastic, full price.
And I've never actually been in a situation where I've had to take psychiatric drugs on any level, but I will admit, like, there was a point early on in this film, the way they're all talking about it, I'm like, yeah, can I have some of that? That sounds, I mean, I don't really get dark depressed or anything. I'm a pretty happy person, but still, there are those days that you're like, wait, it raises your B-level meta complex.
Man, you take that shit, and the first thing you do is just jump out of a window.
Yeah, but with like a bungee cord on my ankle.
Do you want me to call Dr. Feelgood? Is that what you're saying?
Please.
Okay.
Dr. Feelgood. Oh.
Hey,
Wait for this to happen again?
these prove everything.
Destroy that before it destroys you.